Okay, so welcome to tonight's class. So this is basically class 1 of 8 for Mac 3702. So tonight's class is going to be a little bit short. So what I'm going to do in tonight's class, I will give you an overview of how the course will work, um, how the live classes are structured, and then what you can find on the online campus. And because we already ran Mac 3702 as well as Mac 3701, so the recordings of the first semester guys, so all people in that WhatsApp group, basically they were here in first semester or from the beginning of the year, but they'll obviously, most of them wrote already in June with the ECP. Some will be writing in September. So I'm going to upload those recordings that you can watch that. But every week we will go through a past question paper. So on Thursday, what I will do, I will share with you the schedule and the question paper and the topic that we will be covering. And then to do some, and then if you want to do some more questions, by Thursday, we'll upload all those other previous recordings so that you can work through. The way I'm going to work through this is that I'm going to cover all the major topics. So the major topics is going to be WACC, capital budgeting, financial analysis, valuations, source of finance, and then working capital. So those are the 6 big topics that we will be working through. What I will do. So what I'm going to use in the classes from Thursday onwards, I will be using the assignment questions. Okay, so the WACC from the assignment, the capital budgeting, and so forth. And the reason for that is most of the questions we have already covered. So I'm going to upload that on the online campus, so then you can watch that when you study on your own. So I don't want to redo the same question. So what I will do, I'm going to do the assignment question as in our live classes. Then for the revision class, the 3 revision classes, I'm going to work through, I'm going to try to get the ECP exam that was written now in June or whenever, and then we will use that as the revision question paper. So what you're going to see on the online campus, there's going to be basically all the topics. Okay, so all the topics are there. Obviously, the more important the topic and the more challenging the topic, the more information there will be. So the whole purpose of I don't overload you with information. There's no point in doing that. So the way I go about doing something is as follows. I'm never going to give you hundreds of questions to do because I don't follow that approach. The approach I follow is that you do 3 to 5 questions per topic. The most important aspect is the quality of your learning. So it is not about running through 10 question papers, because someone can run through 10 question papers and can still fail, because it's all about what you are learning after running through those question papers. So the ideal scenario is that you get through 5. At the minimum, you must get through 3 questions per topic. So 3 questions per topic at the minimum. Ideally 5. The chance of you doing more than 5 is highly unlikely. So what is the purpose of just doing 3 to 5? Because the quality of working through the questions, that is going to give you your understanding. So when you want to approach, what you need to do is, basically the way I'm going to suggest, remember, ultimately it all depends whether you actually going to do it or not. I can't do it for you, but the suggestion I'm going to give you takes time, and that is why you won't be able to get through thousands of questions unless you're very quick at it. So the idea is that before you what you must do, you need to set up a timetable, right? So when you set up a timetable, whether you do it on a weekly basis, don't do it more than a week. So weekly basis is sufficient. You can have a rough idea for the next, up until the exam, but every week you must review it. So you already know Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what you're going to be studying. So before the time, you know what you're going to be studying. Then the day before the time, you just check again to confirm what you're going to be studying. And you must have selected a topic, and you must have selected a question. Not on the day before. You're saying tomorrow, I'm going to cover WAC, and I'm going to be covering May, June 2019. Okay, so I'm just making up something. So you already select before, the day before, you must select what you will be covering, what you will be covering in the next lesson. Okay, so now before you go in, you already know that I'm doing WAC and I'm doing May, June 2019. That's the first thing you must identify. Then you won't do maybe this from question one, because obviously it's the learning and so forth. And as we do the videos and the live classes, we will explain some more stuff. But as we go through more topics, before you want to do the following, before you start the question. So now tomorrow comes, and now you're going to start. By the way, you must have a dedicated time as to when you're going to study. So you must block that in your calendar. You don't find a gap to study. You make study a priority, and everything else will find a gap. So you must find the important things, put that in your schedule. Everything else will then slot in where there is a gap. Don't slot in studies where there's a gap. You must have a dedicated time. So there may be a few, for example, you must sleep. So you'll have a time when you sleep. If you work, you have a time when you go to work. So there's important things that you must do. So there's a few important activities that you need to do, and that important activities you put in your calendar. Study must be one of those important activities. So there must be a dedicated time. So for example, every day at 8 till 9, for example, whatever you want to do. So you must have a dedicated time when you want to study. You don't find haphazardly. The reason for that is you are training yourself that this is going to be studying time. So after a few days or whatever, you're going to be in the, your body's automatically going to be able to know they have to go study. So just take note of that. Okay. Now, this is the approach that you will be doing when you do study. Before you start a question, you want to run through your mind the a high-level summary, like 5 minutes, a high-level summary of the key issues relating to the topic. So obviously, you will able to do this after the live classes. But once we've covered the live classes, once you went through the notes and the past other question papers, then before you start a question, you want to ask yourself, you want to tell yourself, just 5 minutes, the key issues that of a particular topic. So for example, for WAC, what are the key issues of WAC? So you just want to run through. The reason being is you're just like refreshing your mind. So it's now in the top of your mind what WAC is all about. The second thing you want to do, this may not necessarily be in question one, but the second thing you want to do, you want to remind yourself of the mistakes you have made. So, and then you want to tell yourself you do not want to repeat those mistakes. Okay, very important. So some people keep it here, some people write it down. Either way, do what's best for you. The third thing you want to do, even though this is not an objective of you practicing, but the third thing you want to do, you want to tell yourself you want to work as quickly as possible. The objective is not to finish the paper within time. You don't want to do it under time pressure, but you just want to tell yourself that you want to do it as quickly as possible, because you are training your mind. So your mind is going to know you want to be as quick as possible, although the objective is not to work under time pressure. So every time you start a question, you do those three things. Number one, high-level summary of the key issues. Number two, you want to remind yourself of the mistakes you made and how you corrected it so that you don't do it again in the question. And then number three, you want to tell yourself you want to work as quickly as possible. Then you attempt the paper, you attempt the question. So this question is in the phase where you don't worry about time, right? You're not writing under time pressure. There will come a time when you must write under time pressure, but initially you're not going to write under time pressure. Although you're going to tell yourself you want to work as quickly as possible. Now I do the question paper as far as possible. What's very, very important, if you get stuck, do not look at the solution. If you get stuck, you go look at other resources, the notes. You look at the notes, you look at the textbook, whatever you want to look at, your notes, our notes, the videos, whatever you want to do, but don't look at the solution, because you need to train yourself how you're going to resolve an issue. You don't want to train yourself that when you get stuck, you go look at the solution. That's going to be detrimental for the long term. Okay, so when you get stuck, you will look at some notes and so forth. So in the first 3 questions, it is okay to go back at the notes, at the textbook and so forth. But each time you progress to question, an additional question, the resources that you depend on needs to be less and less and less until you are able to not use any resources, and the only resource you are using is your brain. Okay, so that is what you want to get to. So you attempt the question as far as possible. Question 1, question 2, you most likely use the notes, you'll most likely use videos, you'll most likely use textbooks, whatever you are using. Okay, so question 1, question 2, that's fine. Now when you're done, you now need to mark yourself. So when you mark yourself, there's basically 2 aspects you want to focus on: what you got right and what you got, sorry, there's 3 things. So the first 2 is what you got right and what you got wrong. So for what you got right, this is the first thing. For what you got right, there are 2 things you want to find out. Number 1, did I get it right because I actually knew it, or did I get it right because I got by chance? So sometimes you get something right, but it was merely by chance. Okay, so for the ones you got right because you actually knew it, you can tick that off because you know you're okay. For the ones you got right by chance, generally it's much quicker to sort that out, but you want to resolve it right there and then to figure out exactly how can you get it right next time by actually knowing it. Okay, so that's the first thing. So what you got right, so after you're done marking, you want to identify what you got right. You want to make sure that what you got right, you actually got it right and not by chance. So what you got right, actually, you're happy. What you got right by chance, try to resolve it right there and then. Now I come to the second aspect, and that is, what did you get wrong? Well, the stuff you got wrong, there are 2 things you want to identify. Why did you get it wrong? And where did you go wrong? So where did you go wrong and why did you get it wrong? So once you identified where you went wrong and why you got it wrong, that automatically fixes the problem. Okay, so now you identified where you went wrong and why, so you try to fix it. And then you want to make notes for yourself to make sure that you don't repeat it again. So that identifying where you went wrong and why you went wrong takes a bit of time, but that is where the quality comes in. You're not just rushing onto the next paper. So you're spending some time over there. Once you are done, now I can move on to question 2. But before you move on to question 2, you want to do something with it. So question 2 might be immediately, question 2 might be tomorrow. So you do this whenever you want to, but you must do this before you do question 2. And that is to tell yourself or ask yourself a question and answer it. So ask yourself a question and then answer it. And what is the question? Simple. It's a simple question, but it's not necessarily easy to answer. So what is the simple question? The simple question is, what did I learn? If you can tell yourself what you have learned, then you have actually learned. If you can't tell yourself what you have learned, then you didn't learn. So just take note of that. So you will be able to tell yourself what you have learned if you went through what I just told you in terms of identifying what you got right and what you got wrong. So after every single question, when you're done with that process, you need to ask yourself, what did I learn? And you can just basically repeat, walk through yourself or write it down in terms of what you got right and in terms of what you got wrong and what did you fix? How did you fix it? Now, remember I told you this, that there are 3 parts. So the first part was what you got right. The second part is what you got wrong. The third part will only come into play once you move on to question 2, question 3, and question 4. Okay, you can't do it after question 1. So once you do more than one question, now you can do the third part. And this is where the deep learning takes place. And that is to do a comparison. So now I do, let's say, May, June 2019, October, November 2019. Both are whacked. Let's just say, for example. So I did one, now you're doing the second one. When you do the second paper, the third paper, the fourth paper, whatever number of papers, you go through the same process. Number one, you must slot it in before, you must already know you're going to do it. Okay, down in that, the reason why I do it before the time, so it does not, you want to remove any barriers, any, you want to make it easy for you to go and study. That is why you selected the day before the time. Okay, so now before you start, you do again, number one, high level summary. Number two, remind yourself what you got wrong so you don't repeat it. Number three, tell yourself you want to work as quickly as possible. This takes like 7 minutes. Okay, quick. It takes, you mustn't sit half an hour, must be very quick. Okay, then you get into it. Once you're done writing the question, once you're done doing the question, you go again, you mark yourself. After you're done marking, you identify what did I get right? And for what you got right, did I actually get it right? Or did I get it right by chance? For the ones you got right by chance, what you need to do, you have to, for the ones you got right by chance, what you need to do is fix it right there and then. Just give me 1 minute quickly. Okay, so just take note of that. Then number two is, what did you get wrong? For what you got wrong, once again, you want to identify why did you get it wrong and where did you go wrong? And then you try to fix it. Okay, you fix it right there. You must struggle right there. Remember, part of learning is struggling. Because if you didn't struggle, then you know the stuff already. Okay, so part of learning is struggling. So don't feel bogged down if you're struggling. Try to enjoy it. It's part of the process, but you're actually learning. Because if you're not struggling, then basically you know the stuff. So enjoy the process, okay? Try to enjoy the process and always remember the end where you're heading to. So now you identified what you got wrong and you identified where you went wrong and why you went wrong. So what do? You fix it. Now comes number three. Now with number three, and this is important, okay? This helps you a lot. You want to do comparison. There are two types of comparisons at the minimum. You identify what was similar between question 1 and question 2. And the second thing is what was different between question 1 and question 2. So for example, you will see when we come to it and I'll show you, but basically what you would do, an example would be in WAC, right? We need to determine, there's like 3 things you need to determine. One of the things we need to determine is known as the cost of finance. Okay, so in WAC, one of the things we have to determine is the cost of finance. Now, there are different types of finance. We have equity and we have debt. So for equity, there are different methods to calculate the cost of finance for equity. So there are 3 methods to determine the cost of finance relating to equity. So you could have done question 1, question 2, both is doing WAC. They both may have asked you to do to calculate the cost of equity or the cost of finance for equity, but the one question could have asked you to use method 1 and the other question could have asked you to use method 2. So now the similar thing is you're calculating cost of finance for equity, but the difference is the one used method 1 and the other one used method 2. Or both asked you to use method 1, but how you went about using method 1, there was some difference. So things like that. So when you take that time to identify similarities and differences, that's when you start to see how things come together. That's when you start to identify patterns. That's when you start to actually get a deeper understanding. It's not easy, but it is a nice, fruitful process. So just think about that. So if you work through this, that's why you won't be able to do 10 questions. At max, I can think of 5, unless you are really, really fast. Okay, so you're probably going to get through 5, 3 at the minimum. You don't want to do less than 3, at least 3, but hopefully 5. You will see when you go write an exam, because of that level of studying, that level of learning, you don't have to worry about what's coming in the exam, but you're going to be confident enough to be able to handle any question that comes your way. But if you're only going to run through questions and you're just going to answer what that question is asking of you, the chance of you actually learning, well, you might have learned something, but you are hoping that when you come in the exam that you're going to see something similar. The chance of that happening, highly unlikely. So if you want to be able to handle any question confidently, you need to do deep level of studying. You want to spend the time to actually work through a question thoroughly, properly, and that is a suggested manner of how to go about doing it. So remember, once you deal with that comparison, once again, you ask the simple question, what did I learn? And then you try to answer it. Obviously now, by answering this question, you're going to go a little bit further, because now you're going to be able to tell yourself what you have learned in terms of what you got right and what you got wrong. And you're going to build up from what you got right in the previous question, what you got right in this question, what you got wrong in the previous question, what you got wrong in this question. And then you're going to answer the differences and similarities. You just run that through your mind, or you write it down. Like for me, I just basically sit, maybe stare at the blank wall, and I run it through my mind, or I talk to myself. Or sometimes I write it down. If it's too much for my brain to handle by thinking or talking it through, then I write it down. Because remember, writing has a power. There's a power in writing things down. So there's psychological power in it. So that is what you need to do. So if you really want to succeed, you need to do things properly. You need to do things the right way. So this is a suggested way to do the things the right way. There's not only one way, but this is definitely a way that have worked, not just for me. And I'm talking from people I observed when I studied, and these are the top students that did well. They were more dedicated than me when I wasn't a dedicated student. So so I saw what they do. I applied, but maybe not as I wasn't as consistent as them. But I can tell you, when I applied it, it works. So think about it. Find a way that works for you, but don't find shortcuts. A shortcut's going to you will run into problems on a third year level for Mac. Okay, Mac is not easy. Mac is not difficult if you study it properly. Okay, so Mac is not difficult if you study it properly. And I hope this is what is part of my approach, is to show you that Mac is easy or accounting is easy. But remember, to get to that, to actually realize that it's easy, there's a bit of a process that you need to follow. Okay, so that is what I wanted to mention to you as a starting point, so that when you do start your studies, you work in a manner that is sustainable. And because remember, the chance of you being able to revise every single thing again when you come to September 29, highly unlikely. Okay, I don't know if this is the only course you're doing, but it's highly unlikely that you can that you will be able to revise every single thing. So when you study now, you want to study it properly. Okay. Is there any questions from your side before we move on? Bongani, Nonku, Sergio, Delita. Okay. So, just remember that, right? Don't underestimate proper studying. Okay, don't like forget, if you like with a high school student, forget the high school way of studying. Okay, don't study the night before the time, do it properly. When Gani want to ask something? No? Okay. Okay. So so remember the structure of this program will be as follows. On the course, there will be your materials. So generally, it gets released in stages week by week, but because this is a little bit different in terms of UNISA having one exam, they're not semester one, semester two, so everything is open already. So you will find all the content over there. I never uploaded the previous live Zoom classes. So tomorrow I'm going to spend some time, tomorrow and Thursday, I'm going to spend some time and upload it so that you can watch it directly from there. So we're going to have classes every week up until for the next 5 weeks, I think. We're going to have 2 classes a week for the next 4 weeks, and in week 5 we will have 3 revision classes. The revision class will be for I'm going to try to get the ECP exam, and we're going to use that for the revision class. Like I said, for the next each class we will work through a question from an assignment, because most of the question papers that I covered have been covered already. So I don't want to redo it. So we'd rather cover a different question. So I will just upload certain stuff. Obviously, you will be able, if you work through questions, you can ask me any questions you want. And I will try to respond within 24 hours, but ideally within 48 hours. Because generally the questions you're going to ask come from a question paper that is huge. So I need to read through the entire question paper to make sense of it and actually answer it. Okay. Also, just so you know, if you do ask me a question, so a lot of people message me and then they ask me, what did I do in this? Why did I do A, B, and C in this video? We need to be more specific when you ask me a question on a video. So I don't remember all the videos I did. Okay, so some people say in that WAC video you did A, B, and C. Why? I don't know. I need to go rewatch the video. So ideally, you can give me as much detail as possible, which question paper, which video, where in the video. So it's quick for me to go have a look, because once I go there and I can just see it, perhaps I'll be able to bring back memory and then I can explain it. Okay. The structure of the class is as follows. So it's 90 minutes. In the first 30 minutes, ideally, we're going to try to do it before less than 30 minutes, but in the first 30 minutes, we do a high-level overview of the topic, how to think the key issues of the topic and how to think through it, okay? Then in the hour, I do about a 20-mark question. So I'll usually take a past question paper and I take like a 20-mark question, and then we work through it. Then I show you how I read a scenario. I show you how I understand the required. In most cases, the required is crystal clear. In some cases, not so much, but in most cases, like 98% or 95% of the time, the required is crystal clear. So there's nothing to be confused about. But basically, I'll show you how I read through the scenario and how I make sense of the scenario. And we read the required and understand what the required is asking. And then we use then in order to answer the required, we use a scenario and the key issues of a topic, and we answer it. So because the first 30 minutes, at most 30 minutes, we will do a high-level overview of the topic. And then when we go into the answering the question, I will show you how to think. Okay. Remember, you can obviously develop your own way, but it's just a suggested way of how to think through the required, how to answer the required, given the key issues of the topic and given the scenario. So that is what we will do, so that by the time you tackle something on your own, hopefully by then you will have a way of approaching a question. You will have a way of knowing what are the key issues and how to use the key issues to answer a required given the scenario. What you must know is that the principles and the rules that get tested is exactly the same, but how it comes across is very different. So that is why you want to know what are the key issues, so that if you get stuck, you run through your mind what are the key issues, and hopefully that will ring a light bulb into spotting what is being tested. So if you want to go a little bit deeper in terms of like the approach that I showed you, like a 3-step approach I showed you, if you want to do an additional thing, right? If you want to do an additional, go a step further after the comparison, just like quickly, even if it's by the way, just try to identify when you do, after you do 2 questions and so and more, try to identify what was the principles tested. So if you're doing WAC, try to identify what was the principles tested. You're going to see the principle tested is exactly the same. There may be more than one principle, but ultimately the principles that they are testing is exactly the same, but how they bring it across. And that is what you want to try to get to. What are the principles they are testing? And that is what when I talk about the key issues of a topic. So that the key issues of the topic is basically the key principles of the topic, the key concepts of the topic. So if you know that, you will be able to navigate through a complex scenario. So that is what we're going to try to teach. We're not just trying to teach you to get to the answer. It's more about how do you get to the answer, how to think, so that you can, so when you leave, firstly, when you get to the exam, you can handle any question. And when you enter into the real world, and you are the accountant and the finance manager or the finance director ask you for something, at least you have a basis of thinking, and you can't, and you're not going to give the response, oh, I never learned that at university. Okay, so you don't want to give that response, because remember, as things go, things change. So you need a way to be able to teach yourself once you leave university to keep up to date. And that is part of what we're trying to do. Okay, so just take note of that. So week 1, so this today and on Thursday, we're doing WAC. Okay, so we're going to do a WAC question on Thursday. Week 2, we're going to do on I'll send the schedule by Thursday, but basically week 2, we're going to do capital budgeting on the Tuesday, and I think it's source of finance on the Thursday. Then week 3, we're going to do working capital and financial, and then so week 3 on the Tuesday, we're going to do working capital. On the Thursday, we're going to do financial analysis. And then week 4, which is the last week, we're going to do both the Tuesday and the Thursday, we're going to do valuations. Okay. What you can do for self-study is mergers and acquisitions. I'll load the video, which is by this quick, okay? And what you can do for self-study is strategy, risk management, and governance. I'll upload the video as well, then you can see. Okay, so there's not so much stuff over there, but that video should help you to navigate strategy, risk management, and governance. But the topics I'll be covering: WAC, capital budgeting, financial analysis, source of finance, working capital valuations. Those 6 topics will cover 80% of the paper. Okay, so that will cover, like, if not 100% of the paper. Okay, so but at least about 75, 80% of the paper. So that gives you a good basis that I'll be covering with you. And then week 5, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think I had it, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we will do the revision classes, where we do where we do, I'm going to try to get the ECP paper and we'll work through that over the 3 days. But from your side, what you need from your side is basically consistency. Okay, you want to be disciplined, you want to be consistent. Try to have a dedicated time when you're going to be studying, and literally 60 minutes a day can be enough. But because you have 4 weeks left, you might as well just push. So you can have like a 90-minute session a day. Obviously, you probably don't just have WAC. I mean, you don't just have MAC. I mean, you may have other subjects. So hopefully Monday to Friday, you can do 90 minutes. And then on weekends, you can do 2 to 3 90-minute sessions. And that should be enough. Okay. What I'm gonna, is there anything else I want to cover? That's all that I wanted to cover. Is there any other questions you want to ask me that you may have?
Nothing on my side.
Okay.
I'm all good, sir.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna go straight into WAC on Monday. Delete, you have something? I mean, not on Monday. I don't know why I'm saying Monday. I'm gonna do WAC on Thursday, and I'll share the question paper on Thursday or tomorrow. And then I'm also by Thursday, I'm gonna upload all the videos. I just need to gather it. There's somewhere on my YouTube channel, and then what you call it. So a lot of the videos is free on there. You can watch if you want, but I'll just also upload it so it's easy for you to access it. And then on Thursday, we're gonna go straight into doing some proper quick where we can actually follow the structure of the Zoom classes. First 30 minutes max, we will go through a high-level overview, and in the remaining 60 minutes, we'll do a 20-30 marker question. So whatever even number the marks are, it's generally about between 15 and 25 marks that we will cover. And then you will see how everything comes together. And I hope, like with many of my other students, once you are done with the class, you actually feel that you have learned something and you actually feel confident, and that you just need to go and practice 2-3 more questions so that you can actually solidify the understanding. So remember, it's all about developing a way of thinking. And so it's okay to struggle initially until you get to the question 3, 4, 5, that you want to get to a point where you can write under time pressure and you don't use resources. And the only resource you're using is your brain. Okay. So I'm going to end there for today. And then on Thursday, we will do a full WAC question with a high-level overview. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.